Yes. Wow. Wow. Hello, everyone. My name is Mahin. I'm one of the campaign managers for Flippin' Pain. I wanted to share a little bit of my background first before we go into tonight. So my background is as an advanced practice physiotherapist working in pain management. And most of my role over the years has been helping people to rediscover and get back to the activities that matter to them the most. But one of the reasons that I wanted to get involved with Flippin' Pain was because of a common problem and a source of frustration that I was facing daily in clinic, and something that may resonate with a lot of you. So what I was finding was that a lot of my job was actually having to undo some of the harmful information that had been given to my patients before, maybe by health professionals that had seen them before me, or maybe having to bust some common myths that are out there in the media and society generally. So despite how much effort my patients were putting in, it felt like at times we were fighting this uphill battle. So this is why I wanted to get involved with Flippin' Pain, because we're passionate about educating as many people as possible about pain so that you can make better informed decisions about your care, but also to reduce the negative effect that misinformation can have when people are trying to live with it. Okay, so thank you for all attending. I know that persistent pain is a challenge to manage and also to make sense of, but I'm confident that tonight will be one step in the right direction to making this a little bit easier. So we are going to hear from Professor Cormac Ryan from Teesside University this evening, but we're also going to hear from Nikki, Louise, Shashira, and Kai, who all live with persistent pain. Each of these individuals have their own stories and their own experiences, but equally, they have a lot of similar challenges that have been faced to each other and also to many of you who are watching as well, I'm sure. Okay, but for now, we hope that you find today interesting, useful, enjoyable even. We are going to hear from Professor Cormac Ryan, the amazing Professor Cormac Ryan, in a moment. But before that, I'd like to introduce the equally impressive Nikki.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. I want to begin by stating a fundamental truth. Your pain is real. If you feel it, it is real. So why is it so important that I state that? Because pain is invisible, and only you can experience and measure your own pain. Living with persistent pain makes life even more difficult because pain hurts. It's confusing, upsetting, lonely, and even devastating. It can turn your life upside down. But that doesn't mean that things can't change for the better. Understanding pain better, differently, changed my life dramatically, just as pain changed it first. 23 years ago, pain slammed into my life between one breath and the next, like a cattle prod to the side of my head. It was extreme and it was terrifying. And it didn't stop for 17 years. At that time, I was a young professional in London, working hard and playing hard. And within months, all that changed. I lost my job, my ability to work, my independence, my chance at a family, my identity, and my hope. Over the years, I was given huge doses of medication after medication, surgery after surgery, including a brain stimulator. I tried all the alternatives. Hope after hope after hope, all with the best of intentions, none of which helped, all increasingly disabling. Hope lost. I felt lost. I had lost me. My world became smaller, darker, and more fearful. It's a natural human response. Eventually, I was told there was nothing more to be done. I had to manage. But struggling on was so hard, and by then I was on very high doses of opioids, and the effects were horrible. There was very little support. Then 7 years ago, things changed. I changed. I found me again. I learnt the science you will hear tonight, and it made sense. And it formed the foundation of a sustained recovery, one I still find astonishing and I'm so grateful for. My recovery is in many ways a privilege, but it's not luck, it's not a remission, and it's not a coincidence. And it sure as hell isn't, because it was all in my head. It's hard won in some ways. I had to take control, to learn ways to help myself better, to move forward. And I couldn't do that without understanding what pain was. It's not always been easy, or is easy now. I've needed courage, commitment, and self-compassion. And today I have little to no pain. I have a completely different relationship to the pain that I do get. Life today does look different to how it was before the pain hit, but in comparison to those 17 years I was in the depths of pain, my life now is so good. I no longer use my brain stimulator. I'm not on those high doses of opioids or other drugs. So I want to offer you the hope that there are ways we can change and work with the pain to make life easier, that we can learn to dance with the pain, gentle it, soothe it, maybe even help it disappear. And I know that for those of you who are still in that pain hole, that this can feel frustrating and even unlikely, when all you really want is for it to be gone. But by now you might know that the painkillers don't always help that much, that the surgeries don't always work, and that you can feel let down and even abandoned. When you are hurting, all you want is to be looked after, to be fixed, and that's understandable. Hearing that so much of it will be down to you is tough to accept. When you feel alone and unheard, it's frightening and lonely, because we know that pain is never easy to bear, and we are all doing our best. But there are 4 of us here today who have been in some very dark places, and we have found that a better understanding of pain really does help. It gave us the why, the guide to the how, so that we could find the steps that worked for each of us. And we are here so you know that others have trod this path before you. So while things can feel daunting, it can also feel inspiring. Again, your pain is real, but so is hope. And just what if? What if there is far more you can do to help yourself than you once thought possible? What if? Tonight is just one small step, but an important one. And one I really hope will start to make a difference for all of you. Thank you. And now, here is the most amazing Cormac to delight you.
Cheers. Thank you,
Thank
Nikki.
you.
Lovely. Can we get a big clap, please, for Nikki? Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Cormac Ryan. I'm Professor of Clinical Rehabilitation at Teesside University. I'm also Community Pain Champion for the Flippin' Pain campaign, a physiotherapist and a pain scientist. I want to begin by thanking Nikki enormously for her story, sharing it so honestly, and indeed thanking the other people with lived experience that you're going to hear from tonight. I'm consistently amazed at the stories I hear and how often people bring up the importance of understanding the science of pain, how that has been a catalyst, a really important stepping stone to those individuals moving towards that light and towards that better place. And you heard it in Nikki's story, and you're going to hear it, I think, in stories later today as well. Hopefully, some of those pain science messages you're going to hear tonight, hopefully you find it enlightening, engaging, inspiring, and useful. And thanks so much for coming out tonight. Okay, so I always begin with my conflicts of interest. So I'm a named inventor on a patent for a medical device for delivering sensory discrimination training. I'm also leased out by Teesside University to be the community pain champion for the Flip and Pain campaign. So I don't receive any money directly, more's the pity, for my involvement in the campaign, but my university does. With all of these conflicts of interest, I had hoped that right about now I'd be sunning myself in some Mediterranean port, but unfortunately the reality is not quite as rosy. We've got 6 key messages we're going to cover today. That persistent pain is common and commonly misunderstood. Hurt does not always mean harm. Everything matters when it comes to pain. Medicines and surgeries are often not the answer. Understanding your pain can be key, and recovery is possible. We're going to go through each of these one at a time. We're going to start off with persistent pain is common and commonly misunderstood. So it certainly is common. As Marhin said, 30 to 50% of people in the UK experience persistent pain. It's a huge, huge problem. And because it's invisible, you can't see it in other people. So although it is common, you're not alone. Reach out to people. So it's really common, but it's also commonly misunderstood. Take a look at these 3 statements here. Pain only occurs when you're injured. The greater the injury, the greater the pain will be. And persistent pain means the injury has not healed. Now, these all sound like perfectly sensible, logical statements, but actually they're all misunderstandings rooted in an outdated biomedical model of how pain works. But they're deeply ingrained in our societal beliefs. If we were to ask the average man on the street, how does pain work? He would probably describe something like those 3 statements. Incidentally, when I asked Google to give me a picture of the average man on the street, this is the picture that Google gave me. I can't help but feel that Google has an unrealistic image of what the average man on the street might look like. Over the past 70 odd years, within the scientific community, we've learned a great deal about how pain works, but very little of that information has trickled through to the person on the street. And as such, there are many myths and misunderstandings about pain that persist within society. And these lead to a great deal of stigma, of people not feeling or being believed, and they create huge barriers to good management. Within the Flip and Pain campaign, we believe that knowledge is the key to success. If we can take this scientific information, put it into the hands of the people who need it the most, the person with pain, their friends, their relatives, their healthcare professionals, we believe we can bust many of these myths, leading to reduced stigma and better pain management for all. So, to reiterate that first key message, persistent pain is common and commonly misunderstood. And we're going to move on now to our second key message. And we're going to address one of those key misunderstandings, that pain and injury are the same thing. They are not the same thing. Hurt does not always mean harm. So what do I mean exactly by this? Well, this is a case study published in the journal, the British Medical Journal, one of the most respected journals worldwide. It was published in 1995, and it tells the story of a builder who jumped from one platform to the next, like this. And as he did so, a 6-inch nail went up through his boot. He was in absolute agony. He was rushed to accident and emergency, where they gave him some really strong painkillers like fentanyl, but it had very little effect. They brought him into the operating room, they removed his boot, and what they found was, miraculously, and that's the term they use in the case study, miraculously, the nail had passed between his toes. So there wasn't a scratch on him. He was completely uninjured, yet he was in terrible, terrible pain. It's a perfect example of hurt does not always mean harm. And the reverse is true. So this is a case study published in the journal Injury Prevention. quick disclaimer, that's not the actual picture from the case study. This is not how the man walked into accident emergency. I got that off the internet. There was no picture with this particular case study. But in this case study, a man walked into accident and emergency complaining of headaches. And when they scanned him, they found a 12-centimetre knife had been lodged in his head. Turns out that the night before he'd gotten a little tipsy, fallen over. When he woke up in the morning, he could find the handle of his favourite knife, but he couldn't find the blade. No prizes for guessing where the blade was. One of the my favourite parts of that story is that he had a favourite knife. Like, we all have a favourite knife. So they operated, removed it, and 2 days later he left in pretty good shape for a guy who had had a knife lodged in his head. But it's a perfect example of hurt does not always mean harm. Here we have significant tissue injury with little or no pain at the time. Pain and injury are two separate things. They often hang out together, but not always. And like old school friends, over time, they tend to drift further and further apart. So hurt does not always mean harm. At this point, I'm going to hand back to Marhin, who's going to talk to Louise, and Louise is going to tell you a little bit about her story and how that relates to that hurt does not always mean harm message. I'll be back. Here we go.
You can squat, maybe.
No.
Louise, hello.
Hello.
I know that you've had some scans for your knee that have shown some physical changes. What do you make of the key message, hurt does not mean harm?
Well, when I first had some investigations, some x-rays and scans, I was told that lovely phrase that I had bone on bone, which was absolutely terrifying. And what that did was make me stop doing the things that I really enjoyed. And I mean, that was really difficult. I thought that the pain I was experiencing every time I moved meant that I was causing more damage. So therefore I stopped doing it.
And how has now, so understanding that hurt does not mean harm, how has that changed how you approach activities in life?
Well, I mean, it's still a battle between that old belief that the hurt meant harm and the new knowledge that I've learned since 8 years ago, I suppose, when I stopped taking opioids, that it actually is safe for me to move.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's say that someone is afraid to move or be active. What would you say to an individual like that?
Yeah. It is terrifying. And, initially I was the same.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about kind of that moment. So at the beginning when you used to have that thought, is that correct? Am I right in thinking you had that thought about that? What's changed from then till kind of now, and how would you advise anyone?
Learning about the how pain works has made a big difference to me, and actually knowing that there are small changes that you can actually make for yourself, things like even just the smallest thing of noticing how often you might say ow when you go to get up from a chair or up and down the stairs. I've got arthritis in my knees and feet, and so I experience that a lot. But I did notice that every time I moved, I was making those noises, but not every time I was feeling the pain.
Yeah.
And so stopping that meant that I was reinforcing the message to my brain that actually it is safe to move. Mm-hmm. And that made a big difference. Yeah. And it's just a small thing. And
I think as well, from what we've seen today and what Cormac said, is we know that pain is common. But often people, when they have pain, can feel quite isolated as well.
Yeah.
Is there any ways, any kind of advice you'd give to anyone who maybe feels alone? Is there any kind of groups that they can join? Is that
Yeah,
helpful?
there's lots of groups, and I mean, I lead a walking group for people that live with pain, and they are everywhere, all around the country. So there's also, I would say, find movement that you enjoy. I hate the word exercise, won't use it. So movement. Find something you enjoy, whether it's dancing, walking, swimming, whatever it is that you enjoy doing, and find a group of people that enjoy doing the same thing. Don't do it alone. You're not alone. There are lots and lots of people out there living with pain.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Thank you, Louise. Can we have a round of applause for Louise, please? Thank you.
Lovely. One more round of applause, please. Thanks so much to Louise for sharing her story. Okay, so we've covered that pain is common and commonly misunderstood, and that hurt does not always mean harm. That brings us on to our third key message. Everything matters when it comes to pain. This is, for me, one of the key ones. And if you can get your head around this, well, then you can really begin to understand how pain works. But I'm not going to talk about pain to begin. Instead, I'm going to talk about vision and how our visual system works. Everything we see is a biopsychosocial experience influenced by biological, psychological, and social things. And if you can understand how vision works, well, then you can bring it back and apply it to pain and look at pain as a biopsychosocial thing. So I'm going to need a volunteer from the audience, and we're probably going to need well, I don't know. No, we're not going to need a chair. We'll be all right. We'll only be for a couple of minutes. Stephanie has kindly agreed to be a volunteer. Can we get a big round of applause for Stephanie, please? Stephanie, thank you so much for coming and volunteering. Really appreciate it. Well, that's okay. So am I. We'll just wing it. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, what colour would you say does that square there look like?
Brown.
And what colour would you say that square there looks like?
Orange.
Would you say they look like the same colour?
No.
You're doing wonderfully. You're not nervous at all. You're absolutely slam dunking it. Now, what colour would you say that square is?
Brown.
And what colour would you say that square is?
Brown.
Would you say they look like the same colour?
Yes.
Okay. Now, here's a key question for you. Oh, hold on. Take a look at that bottom square. Would you believe that I'm not actually changing the colour of that bottom square? The only thing I'm doing is putting this white sheet around it. Would you believe me?
No.
And that is why I chose you, Stephanie. That's exactly what I wanted. I don't want you just to believe this. I want you to have a scientific mind, to question. It's really, really important. But I did anticipate you might say that, so I have a Blue Peter version. Hold on there 1 second. Okay. Everyone in the audience will find something similar underneath their chairs, but don't look at it just yet. Okay. For those viewers at home, this might be a little trickier to see. But, okay. Stephanie, what colour would you say that square there looks like?
Brown.
And what colour would you say that square there looks like?
Orange.
Would you say that they look like different colours?
Yes, definitely.
And now, when we pop this over it, what colour would you say that square looks like?
Brown.
And what colour does that square look like?
Brown.
Do they look like the same colour?
Yes, they do.
I'm so glad you said that. Absolutely. Have a look. Do you believe me now?
Yeah.
That's the word. That's what I was looking for. So everyone in the audience, please take up your sheets and have a quick look. Here you go. Perfect. Still believe me? I love it when people flip it over really fast, just in case, can they trick their eyes? But you can't trick your eyes, can you?
No.
No, absolutely.
You've just reframed it with something different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Perfect. Stephanie, thank you so much. You can take that with you. That's lovely. Can we get a round of applause for Stephanie, please? Cheers. Okay, so the question is, how does this work? Well, light reflects off images in the surrounding area. It comes in through the lens of our eye, is projected onto the retina, where it stimulates little receptors that convert the light energy into electrical energy, send it via the optic nerve to the part of the brain that deals with vision. Now, I want you to imagine that in there is a little girl called Sheila. Sheila is surrounded by millions of jigsaw puzzle pieces. She uses those jigsaw puzzle pieces to create in real time an image of what she believes to be going on around you. That's what you see 100% of the time, all of the time. Everything you see is a creation of your unconscious mind. Everything you see is an output of your brain, not an input. The light information is an input, but what you see is an output. Okay? Now, keep that in mind as we go back to this illusion. Take a look over here. You'll see a slightly darker area. So this looks like a shadow. That would suggest a light source is coming from the other side. Now, none of those things are true. This is a 2D image, not a 3D image. But Sheila has evolved to see things in 3D. So she believes that there's a light source and that that's shadow. So she's getting the same amount of light energy from both of these squares, because in truth, in the external world, these are both the same color, both brown. So the same amount of light energy is reflecting off both of them, going in through our eyes, reaching our Sheila. And Sheila would usually say, okay, I'm predict that both of these squares are the same color, both of them are brown. But then she goes, hang on, wait there 1 second. That bottom square is in a darker area. If I'm getting the same amount of light energy from both squares, but the bottom one is in a darker area, it must mean that the bottom one is a brighter color. So she predicts that that bottom square is orange, and thus that's the image she creates for each and every one of us. But as soon as we put this white sheet over, we take out the effect of the shadow. Sheila no longer has to adjust her prediction for the shadow. So she gets the same amount of light energy from both squares, predicts they're both the same color, both brown, and thus that's the image she creates for us. In other words, what you see is not necessarily what is there. It's your subconscious brain's interpretation of what is there. And yes, of course, it's influenced by the light information that comes in, but it's also influenced by your previous experiences, your expectations, your beliefs, your attitudes. Everything matters when it comes to what you see. Now, I want you to start thinking about pain in the same way as another sense. So just like vision. Don't think of pain as an input to the brain. Think of it as an output. It's a creation of your unconscious mind. I want you to introduce you to Assumpta. Assumpta is Sheila's first cousin on her mother's side. Assumpta is the part of the brain that deals with pain. She's like our brain's Department of Health and Safety. When she receives danger messages from the body, or that's the sort of the input, like light is for vision. When she receives danger messages from the body, she asks the question, how dangerous is this really? If on balance, we see her weighing scales there like Lady Justice, if on balance she believes the situation is dangerous, if she assumes the situation is dangerous, see what we did there? If she assumes the situation is dangerous, she'll want to draw your attention to it and get you to do something about it. And thus she will produce the experience of pain, and the conscious you becomes aware of a potential problem. In contrast, if when she receives those danger messages, she does not assume that the situation is dangerous, then she will not want to draw your attention to it, and she'll not want to get you to do something about it, and thus she won't produce pain. It's as easy and as difficult to get your head around as that. But what scientific information do I have, or evidence do I have, that Assumpta exists? Well, there's lots of really, really nice studies to demonstrate this, but this is my particular favourite one. So this was published in Oxford in 2010, led by a lady called Irene Tracy, who's like I'm trying to think of the lady who's just released that big Life of a Showgirl album. Taylor Swift. There you go. Thanks very much. She's the Taylor Swift of the pain science community. And she did this really wonderful study. And I like to think the setup was a little bit like this scene from James Bond's Goldfinger. So healthy participants were asked to lie on a plinth, and they had a laser shone onto 3 different areas of their foot. When the laser was shone onto area 1, all the scientists in the room went, yeah, that's perfectly safe. We can use that for the rest of the study. They then shone the laser onto area 2. And they all went, ooh, no, we can't use that. The skin there is very thin. It could cause a burn. It's too dangerous. Can't use it. They then shone the laser onto area 3. And all the scientists in the room went, we're not sure about this. We think it's safe, but we're a little bit skeptical. So what we're going to do is we're going to use it. We're going to monitor it very, very closely. Then for the next hour, they delivered 120 stimuli, 60 to area 1, the low threat area, and 60 to area 3, the high threat area. Each time they asked the person to say whether they experienced pain or not, and if they did experience pain, they asked them to say how much pain did they experience. So what did they find? What they found was, when the laser was shone onto the low threat area, area 1, participants were far less likely to report the stimulus as painful. Furthermore, when they reported pain in both areas, they reported higher levels of pain when the laser was shone onto area 3. Now here's the key piece of information. There was absolutely no difference between the 2 areas. They were both perfectly safe, but the participants didn't know that. Think about what that means just for a moment. What that means is that what we think about the things we are experiencing, the things we're doing, and the inputs and that we're receiving. If our beliefs matter, if we feel threatened, if we feel like we're in danger, it increases the likelihood that we will experience pain. So what we believe influences our pain experience. That's a really, really exciting finding, because we can change. Our beliefs are ever changing, constantly being updated. And so by changing our beliefs, we have the potential to also change the pain experience, which is, as I say, I think, really, really exciting. Now, in persistent long-term pain, obviously that was acute short-term pain, minutes, hours sort of situation, but in persistent long-term pain, which continues over many months or potentially years, this pain alarm system, Assumpta, the system she controls, becomes sensitized. It becomes overactive. It becomes overprotective. And as a result, even non-noxious stimuli, or a stimuli that's not threatening or dangerous or potentially injurious, can produce the experience of pain. It's more a marker of perceived threat. Persistent pain is not so much due to tissue damage, but increased sensitivity of our body's natural alarm system. And that purpose of that pain is to protect you, is to keep you safe. It's doing it with the best of intentions, but sometimes it's overprotective. Now, a story that I like to use that tries to communicate this idea is one of an oversensitive car alarm. So bear with me as I kind of run through it. I'm going to pop this over here so I don't lose it. Imagine you've got a brand new car. It's really, really sort of important to you. It's your pride and joy. So you drive it to work, you pull up, you get out of your car, you give it a little pat, give it a little kiss, and then you go up your 4 flights of stairs. 1, 2. It's kind of a weird up-down situation. 3, and 4. Ah! That was very close. And you sit yourself down and you start typing away. Meanwhile, a burglar looks out from behind the bushes and says, I'm going to have that car radio. He runs over, he breaks the window, grabs the car radio, then he runs off down the street. 2 minutes later, car alarm goes off. You jump up, you look out your window. I have no idea why your window is so high, it just is, and you shout, "Oi!" But he's gone. He's well gone. He can't hear you. You run down your 4 flights of stairs. 1, 2, 3, 4. A medic might need to be on standby with these stairs. And you call the police. You call the AA. The police come, take a statement. The AA come. They replace your window, replace your car radio. Then the guy says, I'm going to give you a little tip. I'm going to turn up the sensitivity of your car alarm. The next time someone messes with your car, they're going to get a rude awakening. You said, thanks very much. He goes off. You go back up your 4 flights of stairs. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. You sit yourself back down. You start typing away. Meanwhile, same burglar looks out from behind the same bushes, says, I'm going to have that car radio as well. He runs over, but as soon as he touches your car alarm goes off. He gets spooked. You jump up. You shout, "Oi!" You look right into the whites of his eyes. He knows he's been caught. He runs off. You run down your 4 flights of stairs. 1, 2, 3, 4, well, kind of 5. And you're delighted to find that your car is in perfect condition. There's not a scratch on it. And you thank your lucky stars for the AA guy who gave you that tip about increasing the sensitivity of the alarm. You turn off the alarm, but you leave the sensitivity right up because it's doing such an awesome job keeping your car safe. You go back up your 4 flights of stairs. 1, 2, 3, 4. You wished you worked on the ground floor. You sit yourself back down. You start typing away. 2 minutes later, car alarm goes off. You jump up, you look out, and you see this elderly couple have just walked past your car and just glanced off it. Now, your car was in absolutely no danger, but it was enough to set off the alarm, and the alarm sounds just like it did when the window was broken. You go back down your 4 flights of stairs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You turn off the alarm, but you leave the sensitivity right up because it's doing such an awesome job keeping your car safe. You go back up your 4 flights of stairs. 2, 3, 4. You sit yourself back down. 2 minutes later, car alarm goes off. You jump up, you look out, and you see this huge pigeon is sitting on your car. You run down your stairs again, and you shoo him away before he does his business on your car and ruins it. Then you turn off the alarm, but you leave the sensitivity right up because it's doing such a great job keeping your car safe. You go back up your 4 flights of stairs. 1, 2, 3. You sit yourself back down, you start typing away. 2 minutes later, car alarm goes off again. Your problem is no longer the broken window or the stolen car radio or the burglar. Your problem is this sensitized alarm system. And whilst it's doing a brilliant job keeping your car safe, stopping you from doing all the things you need to do at work. Now, persistent pain works in a very similar way. It does a brilliant job keeping your body safe because it's far too sore to do anything even remotely dangerous that might damage it. The downside, of course, is that it's also really sore to do normal, everyday, healthy things that you need to do to keep yourself sort of well and happy. When I do this kind of part of the talk for the general public, I often see these are the light bulb moments. Whenever I see them kind of go, yeah, I can relate to that. That's kind of how my pain works, that increased sensitivity of the alarm. Hopefully you find something that kind of connects with you. If you're a healthcare professional, hopefully that gives you some idea of how you might try and help to communicate persistent pain to the people you work with. So it's very much persistent pain can continue long after normal tissue healing has occurred due to this sensitized alarm system. Now, lots of things can influence the sensitivity of that alarm system. Things that suggest danger or threat increase the sensitivity, whereas things that suggest safety can reduce the sensitivity of the alarm system. Stress is a big one. Stress can increase the sensitivity of the alarm system, as can a low mood. If friends and families are really worried about what it is and are really stressed and concerned about it, that can increase the sensitivity of the alarm system. Financial insecurity can increase the sensitivity of the alarm system. The science here absolutely blows my mind. This demonstrates that it doesn't have to be a specific threat to that bodily area. Generalized threat can actually increase the sensitivity of the alarm system. Feeling financially insecure increases the sensitivity of the alarm system. Find me someone these days who doesn't feel financially insecure. Pain-related worry and anxiety, fear or worry about what might be causing the condition and its consequences can increase the sensitivity. But also lifestyle factors. So sort of poor diet, poor sleep, low levels of physical activity, all of these can increase the sensitivity of the alarm system. Previous traumatic experiences, as well as loneliness, all of these things can increase the sensitivity of that alarm system. Now, information has a huge influence, okay? Positive, accurate information can actually reduce down the sensitivity of the alarm system, whereas negative, inaccurate information can fan the flames and make the system more sensitive. This is a lovely study which kind of brings that to life. So there's a series of studies which show that when we scan people with back pain, we statistically increase the risk of them having a poor outcome. I'm going to say that again. When we scan people with back pain, we statistically increase the risk of them having a poor outcome. So you're probably asking, how is that possible? Well, think about it for a moment. Imagine you go to your GP, you're a 50-year-old guy, and you say, I've got some back pain. GP naturally says, well, why don't we have a quick scan of it? Scan comes back and it says, you've got degeneration. And what can I ask, when I say the word degeneration, what does that make you think in the audience? Do you want to throw out words that you think when I say the word degeneration? Wear and tear, absolutely. Anything else? Irrevocable, absolutely. It's never going to get better. Breaking down, correct. Yeah, absolutely. A bone on bone, as Louise mentioned earlier on. These are the sorts of things which the word degeneration conjures up. Are these likely to make you feel safer or less safe? Do any of those words sound safe? No, absolutely not. They increase the threat. Now, when Assumpta hears these, she's going to think you're at even greater risk than she originally thought. So she's going to use the only thing that's in her toolbox to protect you, and that's pain. And so it's likely she will ramp up the sensitivity of the system. Now, what we often don't tell people as healthcare professionals is the full story. And a more complete story is given in this table here, which was published by Brinjikji in 2015. This table here presents the different imaging findings for the various age categories from the 20s all the way up to the 80s for people who have no back pain whatsoever. Completely asymptomatic, healthy backs. If we just look at the 50 category, which we've highlighted here, what we see is 80% of people in their 50s with no back pain whatsoever have degeneration on a scan. What this tells us is that these things are not necessarily pathological. Rather, they are the kisses of time. They're grey hairs. They are wrinkles. They are normal age-related changes. But we don't tell people that. Instead, we tell people, oh, your pain is due to this degenerative change. All that seems to do is increase pain-related fear and worry and lead to poorer outcomes. I have a lovely story about an individual who went for a scan and was told his spine was like a digestive biscuit. It's a perfect example of negative, inaccurate information. His spine was no different to my spine, to your spine. It was not crumbling like a digestive biscuit. They couldn't even use a robust biscuit like a hobnob, something with a bit of steel behind it. It was all it did was deliver negative, inaccurate information, which increased fear, worry, increased the threat value, and leading to a poor outcome. When we give this full story, when we give a more scientific explanation of these scans to patients, when we say, okay, you've got some changes, but actually they're normal age-related changes and are not necessarily pathological, we actually take away the negative impact of the scan. Okay, that's a perfect example where positive, accurate information can reduce the sensitivity of that alarm system. Okay, we're now going to speak to Sash, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her story with relation to Everything Matters when it comes to pain. Can we give Sash a big round of applause, please? Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you squat?
I know. It's testing my legs then. Shash, hello. So we've just heard the key message when everything matters when it comes to pain. What does that mean for you personally?
So I have, hopefully you can all hear me, I have persistent pain in my shoulder. And when I hear that phrase, what it means to me is that my pain levels aren't just affected by the mechanics of what's going on in my shoulder, but it's affected by everything that's going on in my life. So when this first happened to me, I thought it was a purely physical thing. It was a tendon injury, an RSI caused by work. And it was. And I very much associated my pain levels with activity, doing stuff on the computer and the phone. But over time, I started to notice that my pain levels were affected by other things as well. So even if I hadn't done any sort of activity like that, if I'd slept badly or if something bad had happened, I was worried, I noticed my pain levels could be really high and I hadn't done any computer work. And then sometimes I'd be in a lot of pain and I would be having maybe a nice moment with a friend, having a joke about something, and then I'd suddenly realise, oh, in this moment I haven't got any pain actually, so like what's going on here? And you know, as I started reading more about the pain science and getting involved with flipping pain, I started to understand that this persistent pain thing is a kind of different animal from the injury that I'd suffered. Like the injury definitely triggered it, but this persistent pain was coming from this sensitised nervous system. And that really resonated with me because I'm a natural warrior. So what that means then is that anything that affects your nervous system, like stress, can affect your pain levels. And as we know, like stress comes in many different forms, so it can mean a lot of different things.
Yes, can you share some of those things? So have you noticed anything that makes your pain better or worse?
Yes, I'll start with what makes it worse. So if I spend too long on the computer or using my phone, it definitely spikes my pain levels. But other stuff like cooking, like stirring pots, cleaning, long distance driving, all those things can make my shoulder hurt much more. The other big thing is sleep. I'm not the best sleeper, but if I haven't slept very well, I just wake up, my body feels a lot more sensitive and my shoulder hurts more. And of course, other stress, big thing. If I've had a difficult conversation, or again, like I said, if I'm worried about something, that can really drive my pain levels. So you also asked what makes it better. Rest really helps. If I don't do anything, if I'm cooked for, cleaned for, I don't have to work, have low stress, I can have very low pain levels. But that's not the reality of my life. I've got to do stuff. So I pace things that I do. I pace a lot of things that I do, not everything. And pacing really was the bane of my life for a long time. It took me about 3 years to get it right, because I'm one of those people that's always rushing through life, trying to get stuff done, be really efficient, bang, bang, bang. Now suddenly I have to just hang like a third of that load of laundry and then come back and do the rest later. Like, it was really frustrating. But one of the best pieces of advice that one of my doctors gave me, he said, Sashira, to go fast, you've got to go slow. And I think what he meant by that was just, slow down, stop rushing and making every task you do some big stress, like a threat to your nervous system. And I was like, okay, and I started to do that, and suddenly I found that after doing that pace, suddenly I could actually hang a whole load of laundry, I could cook a whole meal in one go, and I think it was just teaching your nervous system to feel safe doing it. So that was a really good piece of advice. The other things are stuff like good sleep, which for me means good diet, low alcohol intake, exercise, because keeping everything moving nice and loose really helps, and really trying to keep myself in a sort of positive mood. So getting involved with Flipping Pain really helped, because it's being around people that understand. And then I learned about relaxation, and when I felt my body tense, I could just try and deep breathe and things like that. Those are probably the main things. Just trying to keep stress low, or just deal with stress in a better way.
Yeah, I love that bit of advice that you got, and I'm probably going to steal that one. You've touched on this already a little bit, but what else has changed for you since realising that everything matters when it comes to pain?
Oh, lots of things. When I realised this was a nervous system thing, I stopped looking to physio to be the one fix for my shoulder. And I started making changes in throughout my life, just to try and deal with stress better, reduce stress. Work was a big change. So work was a massive source of stress for me. I had quite a full-on job in financial services in the city, working really long hours, really stressed out. And now, when I because of my shoulder, I had to stop working out. I couldn't work for many years, which was really difficult. But now I've managed to get back to work, and I work for myself, so I can control my hours. I work part-time because I do still struggle doing a whole day on a computer. And when I do work, I have to pace everything that I do, take lots of breaks, and I have special ergonomic equipment that I use, like a sit-stand desk, a special keyboard. It all helps my posture. So that's changed quite a lot. My whole working life and identity has changed massively, and it was difficult because I had a huge cut to my income, but I was lucky I could reduce my expenses and manage. And I've got to say, I've got less stress in my life, a bit more autonomy, a lot more autonomy, and I can't say I'm any less happy than I was before, really, despite all of this. It's not been an easy journey. The other big thing that's changed is a sort of a mindset thing. This only happened about a year ago, so quite a few years into this whole persistent pain experience. Is around sort of learning to accept it, I think, because for a long time I just couldn't accept that I had persistent pain. I put my whole life on hold. I said, I'm going to sort this out, I'm going to fight it, I'm not going to move on until I've done it. And years went on and nothing changed, and one day I thought, I just have to move on. And so I started focusing more on moving on and less on my shoulder pain, and sort of, I don't know, maybe that kind of implied a sort of acceptance, and things became a little bit easier. I still do have pain. I still do have quite high levels of pain sometimes, but somehow it's a bit easier to cope with it and manage it. So yeah, it's been really tough, and I've felt down and depressed for quite a long time. But finally, with these little changes to lifestyle and ways of working, I finally feel like I'm on the way up.
Yeah, thank you, Shashira. Thank you for sharing.
Lovely. Thanks very much. Okay, can we get another round of applause, please, for Sash? Again, just really nicely reiterating that key point that everything matters when it comes to pain. And that brings us on to our fourth key message, which is that medicines and surgeries are often not the answer. So I kind of often like to compare pain to fire. When we think about fire, fire is a really noxious thing that you just want to get away from. Okay? You don't really care what's causing it. You just want to get away from it and you want it gone. But actually understanding what's causing that fire is a really important thing because it influences the type of fire extinguisher you use to try and put the fire out. So for example, if you've got a water fire extinguisher to hand and this stage spontaneously combusts, then the water extinguisher will be really, really handy to put that fire out. However, if any of the technical equipment, the electrical equipment goes on fire, then that water extinguisher is a terrible idea because it won't just not put the fire out. It might actually make the fire a lot worse. So understanding what's causing the fire really helps you to empowers you to make a better decision about what tool to use to put it out. Now, if we look at pain in a similar type way, pain is noxious, it's awful, you don't really care what's causing it, you just want it to go away. However, understanding what might be causing it can really help you to choose the best tools to help you manage it better. Now, if we look at opioids, for example, and I'm going to really focus in on opioids for this section. For acute pain, what I mean by acute is short-term pain. So the sort of pain you might experience if you're hit by a bus, then in the immediate aftermath, if I'm hit by a bus, please, I'd like some opioids. Thanks very much. If you've just had a really major operation, then some opioids in the immediate aftermath can be really, really useful to help with the pain management in that early stages. However, for persistent, long-term pain, opioids seem to be a bad idea. They have very limited effectiveness and they're accompanied by a great deal of side effects. There's a lovely systematic review published by a chap called Boos in the journal JAMA, really well-respected journal, which was a systematic review of dozens and dozens of randomized controlled trials, really top quality trials to investigate the effect of opioids compared to placebo drugs or sham pretend drugs. What they found was that for these people with persistent pain, these opioids were only 7% more effective than opioids or sham pretend drugs. To put that in context, 10% is the minimally clinically important difference. In other words, if you're not achieving at least 10% pain relief, it's a waste of your time. So these people weren't receiving meaningful pain relief, yet they were still experiencing a great deal of side effects. That's why there's a huge drive within guidelines to move away from opioids as a treatment for persistent pain. As the song goes, the drugs don't work. Essentially, they're just not really all that effective. And a move towards active physical and psychological therapies where you get much better bang for your buck. There's a considerable body of evidence to show that active physical and psychological therapies are beneficial for persistent pain and come with very few side effects. They're a clear winner. But that's not always what ends up happening in the practice of the management of persistent pain. So we're now going to move on to Kai, and Kai's going to talk a little bit more about his journey and his experience with opioids. Can we give Kai a big round of applause, please?
Don't stop clapping, guys. Keep it going.
How are we doing, guys?
So Kai, we've just heard that medications and surgery are often not the answer. I know that you've had a lot of experience with these treatments. Do you want to start by just sharing a little bit of that with the audience?
Yeah, so the reason I was so keen on you guys clapping is because on the 8th of May 2015, I got involved in a motorbike crash that unfortunately meant that my left arm permanently died. The nerve that controls it tore from my spinal cord. Any physios or physiologists in the room, it's called the brachial plexus. And that meant that my arm was no longer useful. I was a mechanic at the time, I was 18 years old. And that kind of took all of my identity with it. I was a very cliche mechanic. Used to go pub on the weekends, eat Gamesters pasties, and I used to love doing an MOT. And when you take an arm from that man, it takes a lot of identity. It takes a lot of that. And that wasn't the worst of it. The worst of it was not only did I lose an arm, but I was experiencing a bit of pain. It wasn't severe pain at this point, it was moderate. But over the course of 4 years, I started collapsing, and they noticed that my spinal cord, for any physios in the room, at C7 and C6 was herniated, which basically meant that I wasn't getting the right, the right movement to my legs and lower body. And as soon as I got to university, after I kept coming to grips, rather ironically, with the loss of my arm, they told me I had to drop out and I needed, severe experimental surgery. And when I awoke from that surgery, I awoke paralysed from the neck down. Devastating. I was on loads of drugs, and that caused me to have something called pharmacologically induced psychosis. I then got out, regained upper body movement with the exception of the left arm, but my legs were completely gone. 6 months later, after neurological rehabilitation, I'm back on my feet and I'm back to university, but I'm in debilitating pain. And they're telling me that there's scar tissue growing where I had the spinal surgery, and that scar tissue is causing like a strangulation type effect in my cord, something every 19-year-old wants to hear. So I need another spinal op in 2020, which paralyses me again from the waist down. I then go for another spinal op in 2021 because I'm now not only more disabled than ever, but in more pain than ever. And once again, that paralyses me again. So by this point, it's been an 8-year period of nerve graft surgery, spinal ops, all of which have caused me more pain and more suffering, and I'm more disabled than ever.
So you've had quite a lengthy experience with these treatments. When did you first realise that medications and surgery are not the answer?
Well, obviously during this period of 8 years, I was on a huge amount of medications, naproxen, gabapentin, omeprazole, because my stomach was destroyed by these medications, not to mention all the opioids they put you on for surgical pain, all the CBD gels and neurogels and all these things that you try and use to help with the pain, because you try anything when you're in these situations, you really do. But in essence, I started noticing that these weren't working, and the surgeries weren't working. They were making me worse. So someone has missed something. Someone, and I mean, I had 8 consultants, I had so many surgeons, I had physios coming out there, you know what. So, someone missed something, and that led me to kind of delve into pain science myself. Luckily, I'm quite an independent learner, and, I was studying psychology, so I went, you know what, I'm sure I can grasp this. And I picked up a book called Explain Pain by Lorimer Moseley and David Butler. Lorimer is actually a friend of the Flippin' Pain campaign. And all of these messages are, in essence, that book condensed. So you don't have to read the book, guys. It's right behind me. And it basically told me for the first time that this process that I was experiencing, this pain I was experiencing, wasn't just a broken spinal cord. It wasn't just a nerve that's destroyed in my arm. It's actually a psychological and sociological experience as well. And that those factors, I was treating a physiological problem when in fact it was a biopsychosocial problem.
That's a great way to kind of put it. And what would you say to someone who has experienced an injury, or like yourself, who's struggling to come to terms with the fact that hurt doesn't always mean harm, or hurt doesn't always mean harm?
You see, that was the most eye-opening key message for me, that hurt doesn't mean harm. Because when you're treated as a brachial plexus injury, when you're treated as a herniated spinal cord, when you're treated as broken, you think you need to be fixed. And I think that the first thing I would do if I'm speaking to someone that's in my situation, where they've had damage, but that damage is somewhat healed. I'm not going to be clapping anytime soon, but somewhat healed, but they're still experiencing persistent pain. I would first validate their experience. I would say, I understand. It's devastating. You've experienced loss. You've experienced, tremendous heartache, pain, and suffering beyond physiology, and I understand that it feels horrendous when your body lets you down. But then I would give them hope, and I would give them the last key message you're going to hear from Cormac shortly, that recovery is possible. And When I was a mechanic, I used to love my life, don't get me wrong, but I used to, I didn't do much. Now, I've lost an arm. I'm doing my master's in health psychology. I just came back from doing a runway on London Fashion Week. I'm a public speaker for the public health campaign Flipping Pain, and my aspirations are so much higher than they've ever been. So this journey of pain and suffering has given me something. It's given me aspiration. It's given me understanding. And that's what we're doing. We're giving people understanding. So I think that fundamentally, hurt doesn't mean harm, and it doesn't. And, just because you feel like you're experiencing all of this hurt doesn't mean that you are damaged or broken, and you can find a way out.
Thank you, Carl. Thanks for sharing.
Keep clapping. There we go. Cheers, Kai. Thanks, man. Thanks very much, guys, and thanks to Kai once again for sharing a story. Each story is just, so that balance of all of the significance of it, and the difficulty and the tragedy, and then the inspiration of the turning things around. Just extremely impressive. So really, really grateful to Kai and indeed all our lived experience speakers. Okay, so we're on to our last two key messages. That understanding your pain can be key and recovery is possible. And we talk about these two in tandem because they really kind of go together. So this is data that was provided to us by Professor Lorimer Mosley, who you've already heard about, based in Australia, who runs a sister campaign to our own called Pain Revolution in Australia. But this is data from a clinic where people with pain would go for management. On average, people had pain for 6 years, and they had pain of about 5 out of 10. And when they attended this clinic, they would receive pain education similar to the type of education we're doing here, only a little bit longer, more in depth. And they also received a smorgasbord of active physical and psychological therapies in line with clinical guidelines. What they found was, for those people who early on flipped their understanding of pain away from an old, outdated biomedical hurt equals harm understanding towards a more biopsychosocial everything matters when it comes to pain understanding. For those individuals, after a month, their pain levels were relatively similar. But after 6 months, their pain levels had begun to come down a little. And after a year, they'd come down quite a bit. In contrast, those people who didn't change their understanding, who maintained a very hurt means harm understanding at the early point, their pain levels remained relatively stable and high throughout. So what does this tell us? Well, it tells us two things. First, it tells us that recovery is possible. If recovery was not possible, then this orange group here simply could not exist. But they do exist. People can improve. People can move to a better place. The second thing is that understanding your pain can be key. We don't say it is key, because we can't say for certain it was the changing the understanding that led to a better outcome for these people. This is not what they call a randomized controlled trial where you can claim cause and effect. It could be that they all improved because they were all Capricorns. It's unlikely the case, but it's possible. There is a suggestion here that understanding their pain was a key part of their recovery journey, just like all the stories we've heard thus far. And there is a growing body of evidence from randomized controlled trials to show that people who understand pain better, that facilitates an improvement in their condition. So often when we deliver sessions like these, people say, well, how can I use this information to help me to manage my pain better? And this kind of is a nod to that. If we were to line up all the things we know, if everything matters when it comes to pain, if we line up all those things we know that can influence pain, some of the things we can't change perhaps, like genetics, for example. But what about the things we can change? What if we started off with anxiety and stress? What if we engaged with things like mindfulness and meditation? What if we improved our diet by increasing our fruit and veg intake and our fish intake? What if we reduced our poor sleep by using things like good sleep hygiene tactics? What if we reached out to our social supports, re-engaged with community groups and sought that social support that we've kind of brought ourselves in from? And what if we increased our activity levels just a little bit more movement? It doesn't have to be much. You don't have to go to the gym. Things like getting off bus stop one stop early, as an example, just walking down to the end of the garden. All of these things can help to reduce the sensitivity of the alarm system. Now, what we will say is when we talk about the idea of recovery is possible, it's really important to say that when we talk about that, we mean recovery in its broadest sense. Recovery means different things to different people. For some people, a recovery is a reduction in their pain. For others, recovery might be being able to go back to work despite your pain, or just feeling better in yourself despite your pain. It means different things to different people, and often recovery is not necessarily what you had envisioned it would be. It might be something different, but it is possible. Everyone can improve. And that's a really, really important thing to finish on. Just before I finish, can I thank everyone for their contribution thus far? Can I thank Flippin' Pain and Cora for funding Flippin' Pain? Really, really appreciate it. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to reach out to so many people. So we hugely, hugely appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming and listening. Thank you, guys. There you go.
We're going to go into a Q&A. So questions have been sent through from the audience online, but of course, if anyone has got a question here as well, do raise your hand. I'm going to start with one that's come online first of all. So this is a question from Savitha saying, can pain cause stress? Or can stress aggravate pain? So the relationship between those two. And how do you sort this? Do you sort out the physical pain first before the mental side of it? Yeah, Nikki, please, yeah.
For me, stress, you need to sort the stress first. For me, definitely. It is a very sort of triggering effect on the pain.
Yeah, I would agree. And for me, it got so bad that when I refused to do, or not refused, but when I didn't address it and do anything about it, then my body started sending me the messages and I would get something else on top, more recently, pancreatitis. So you have to address the stress in order to reduce the pain.
I mean, fundamentally, when we're looking at people in pain, we're looking at people stuck in fight or flight. We're looking at people stuck in something called the sympathetic nervous system, and that's when that part of, that really innate part of you that wants to either run away from that scary thing or run towards it kicks in. And that is what is sensitizing your nervous system. So, fundamentally, if you want to get out of pain, if you're in pain, you are stuck in fight or flight. You have been through so much stress, so much suffering that your body can't get into that rest and digest parasympathetic nervous system state. So I would say that they are so interlinked that if you are noticing, like I did when they were telling me that I was just broken, that when I'm more stressed and when I'm more sad, I'm more in pain, then it's more than likely because it's just increasing the sensitivity of your nervous system.
I would totally agree with that. I think I was stuck in fight or flight for a very long time, just low-level stress, sometimes high-level stress, and I think that's what came first. But it's difficult because then when you get in pain, that causes stress too, and then all the other things that come with being in pain cause more stress, so it becomes this horrible little loop of just stress. And so you have to address all these different little stresses, and it can be really overwhelming sometimes because it's like, where is this coming from? It's like whack-a-mole. If I thought this, which is why what worked was just doing a holistic thing, everything out: diet, exercise, work, people, all of that.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take one more from online. So Sharon's noticed that the weather can affect her pain. How do we change that? And without kind of saying that let's start prescribing holidays on the NHS, that would be brilliant, wouldn't it? I think that'd solve everyone's problems. But yeah, have any of you noticed that weather can affect pain, and how do you manage that? Yeah, Kai, I'll go to you and then...
Unlucky for me, I live in Manchester, guys. So I know it's devastating. I should never not be in pain, given that, that's where I live. I think this goes back to the key message: everything matters. It really does. Fundamentally, every single thing matters. And it's not external things always. It's not just internal things. It's an amalgamation. As Cormac says, you're not a biological being, you're a biopsychosocial thing, and your human experience is that amalgamation. So think about it. When it's pouring down outside and you're looking out the window and you had a nice day planned to go to the beach, you're gonna catastrophize, aren't you? You're gonna have a bit of anxiety. You're gonna be like, oh, that's ruined my day. That internal process is affecting your pain. So there's, and that's just looking at the psychology, not the sociology, not the relationships that have been lost because of the rain and all that. So, a lot of the time when an experience happens, we fundamentally just think, oh, it's just the weather hitting my pain. No, there's so many other things at play, and the way you get over that is by starting to, learn about your dims and sins, learning about your triggers, learning about what makes your pain worse and what makes your pain better, and just doing more of the doing more of the former and less of the latter, or vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, I am one of these people that is affected when it gets really cold. Obviously, I love the heat,
That's great, thank you.
but the cold is quite nasty. I have arthritis, so it really plays into that. But one of the things I did was made a conscious decision that when it was particularly, it was a rainy day perhaps, and that used to be a time when I would look out the window and get quite depressed about my whole situation. But somebody started talking to me about reframing things, and so I decided that the next time it rained, it wasn't going to stop me going out. I was going to get on my wet weather gear and get out there. And it didn't matter how far I went, even if it was just around the block. But getting outside seemed to make a big difference to how I viewed that day. Instead of sitting inside feeling totally depressed and the weather's awful, my pain's awful, life's awful, it felt so different being outside it was raining, but it was just a whole different way of thinking. So I know it sounds easy, but just give it a try.
So I, for years, couldn't go out at all. I had to go outside. Any wind, any rain on my face would cause excruciating pain. And once I understood this science and I understood that my brain was just seeing it as a threat, I very carefully and systematically desensitized my face, basically. And I did it with safety talk, graded exposure. So I would open my scarf to the wind and this is fine. And then I would pop a little jelly bean in my mouth as a bit of positive reinforcement. And it felt really bonkers. I'm like training myself like a dog. But do you know what? I went from not being able to go out on a summer's day to cycling in the wind down, mountains, basically. So it took a long time, it took a lot of courage and effort, but it is possible.
Yeah, thank you. So let's just go to the audience for a second. Yeah, we've got a question over here. Thank you, Sam.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody. How much do you think the language of healthcare professionals made a difference to your journey in the beginning? If the language had been different, do you think your journey would have been different?
I think there's a few people who might want to answer that. Should we start with... Go on, Nikki, go for it.
I've done whole lectures on this. The language is hugely important. I was told intractable, that I would never recover. I think if language was a bit more careful, it would make a big difference for people.
Yeah, that's a really difficult question to answer, because I like to think that everybody is trying now to do things better. So, let's draw a line. Some awful things were said to me, including things like, well, if you just lost some weight and moved more. But, I try and think those days are gone. Everyone's more interested in moving forward and getting things right. So, Yeah, but language, I think language is hugely important.
I could go into like studies about linguistics, but I don't want you falling asleep. So I'm going to give you a bit of anecdotal stuff. When I first lost my arm, the doctor, I remember overhearing a conversation between my dad and the doctor. And obviously, you know, at this point, I'm in a really bad situation. They don't know what's going on. But the doctor said to him, your son's going to live in pain the rest of his life. And it's going to be the worst pain. It's going to be neuropathic pain. Now, I've just lost a career. I've just lost identity. I've lost all of that. And now I'm hearing this conditioning. And I did experience, you know, what I would call the worst pain. But I think that was coded into me. I think a lot of it was expectation. A lot of it was the fact that, you know, it looked terrible. It felt terrible, so it must be terrible. So I think that if you're a healthcare professional, you need to be really cautious with the words you're using. But if you're also a person in pain, you have to be very cautious of how you're talking about your own pain. I used to call my pain, I used to describe it as hot burning knives stabbing my arms. And whenever I got it, I was like, oh, this is the worst pain in the world. Now when I get pain onset, I go, that's some impressive pain. My nervous system's such a good protector, man. It's really looking after me. And I feel like, and I don't describe it in such harsh terms anymore, because I realise that psychology is creating my perception, and that perception is what I live in. So linguistics is fundamental to your experience, both as a healthcare professional and a person in pain.
Yeah, it's hard because you kind of want to be validated. You want someone to say there's something wrong with you and this is what it is. And so when I first of all, I went to the doctor, they did some scans. You've got all this like long things like osteoarthropathy, or ACR joint. And I was like, oh, that's what I've got. Okay, fine. I've got a problem. It kind of gets into your head. I've got this thing. And then sort of months go by and they're like, oh, you've got chronic pain. And that's what they called it then, chronic pain. It's like, chronic pain. Okay, this is never going away then. And so you get kind of invested with it, you know, and you're like, this is, so in a way you want to, because it explains, it gives a label to what you have. But sometimes doing that increases the threat level that you feel, which in turn sensitizes your nervous system and sort of feeds into that whole loop. So I've been trying to do what Kai was saying, is like when I feel it coming up, I'm like, oh, my body's trying to tell me something. It's just an alarm. I've not hurt myself. Take it a little bit easier, you know, just slow down, take a break, and try to address it that way. But yeah, I got very invested in the language that was used with me earlier on, and so, you know, you've got to be careful with that.
Yeah, and just from a health professional point of view, and this is to any health professionals watching, I think in one appointment, you are unlikely to change someone's life, okay? Because somebody may have had pain for months or potentially years, but the harm that you can do in one appointment is great. And the words that we use is one of the ways that we can harm, in essence. So it is careful that we use the right words, but just being aware of, you know, how is that person, you know, across the table or the clinic room going to take that bit of information? How would you like to be spoken to, and what information would you like to receive? We don't want to give any of that harmful information out, because that can actually dictate or influence how people then end up trying to manage their pain as well. Shisho, I'm going to stay with you for the next one, and I probably want to hear from most of you, if not all of you, about this one as well. So we've got a question here about pacing. So somebody's really keen to hear about people's experiences of pacing, and the barriers to this as well, and things that might have worked well. So I know there's a lot in there. So yeah, experiences of pacing, and what might the barriers be for pacing? Okay, I think we've spoken about some of this before. I just want to come to you first, and then what's worked well as well.
Yeah, pacing. So much fun with pacing. It took me, like I said, a few years to get it right. Essentially, it's just kind of slowing down the way you do things. But, you know, when it was first explained to me, I was given this kind of booklet, a bit complicated, do 2% of what you can manage, 10% of what you can manage, and then it, you know, increase it to 15. I'm like, oh, what is 10%? What's 15%? So it was that was explained to me. Then I was given a kind of, we'll do it with time, you know, can you do sort of half an hour and then take breaks, rate your pain levels, is your pain a 5 out of 10? If it's less than that, just take a 2-minute break. If it's more than that, take a half an hour break. And it was really difficult to kind of track it. So yeah, the experience was not good, but I stuck with it, and I met someone who sort of explained it to me a little bit more clearly, and got me to really sort of strip it right back and just do little amounts of what I you know, you always overestimate what you think you can do, and then you end up in boom bust pain cycle. So she was like, just, you know, literally just the smallest amount of what you think you can do and just grow from there. And that's how I started. And bit by bit, it did work. But now when I pace, I don't have to be anywhere near as conscious of it. And like, I used to write stuff down, how much time I've spent doing sort of computer work or anything. Now I don't have to do any of that. But it was a bit of a sort of mental habit. I mean, more the thing that was probably that really helped my pacing was to understand that I'm not trying to rush through things, and, you know, I had this perception that everything had to be a stress. Everything was difficult. I don't know where that came from, probably childhood, but I have to slow down and take things a bit easier. So that sort of thought, coupled with sort of doing the pacing in this more sort of simpler way, that was what started to help me.
Yeah, great. Does anybody else want to share? Yeah.
I'm not good at pacing. I'm awful at pacing. I'm good at being kind to myself, and that's what I changed it to. I'm only going to give you this quote because it's what my therapist told me, and it's been great for me. I don't pace, but I do treat myself how I treat my mum. And if my mum's rushing around the house doing a million things, I'll be like, Mum, sit down. You've done enough today. So I never give myself that level of respect. But now that's what I do instead of pacing. I just treat myself how I treat my mum.
Very good, Kai. Yeah. And I've always said to people that pacing has been the hardest one for me to learn. And the only way that I have learned it is by failing many, many times before. And I think we all fall into that trap of thinking, hey, you know what? Today's a really good day, so let's get as much done as we possibly can today. And then, of course, we know what happens. The next day we are on the sofa and, yeah, paying the price for it. But sometimes you have to sort of weigh up what are the pros and cons of going ahead and doing something. And sometimes it is worth pushing yourself if the reward is big enough. But it's not something I would want to repeat again and again. So, but yeah, I would agree with you, Kai. I'm not great at it.
Yeah, I don't really pace per se now. It's more about living with a lower level of intensity, just sort of in general. So I just try and approach life like that. So anything that I can move myself from a sense of threat to a sense of safety, basically. And, you know, that wouldn't be working full time, for instance. That would be working part time and smoothing life out.
So I'm going to just stay with you two for the next question, which is related to opioids. But can we just appreciate how I've done that? Like, the mic's come back over to you both, and I know this question's perfect for you. Oh God, you think they're giving me a job in this, but this is literally my job. So yeah. So we've got a question in about opioids. So a question from Wendy. I've been on opioids for 3 years, and can I get any advice on how to stop them? So just to be clear, we can't obviously give any personalised medical advice, but I know both of you have had experiences with opioids, so we'd like to just share with the audience a little bit about that.
It's interesting because we've both had very sort of opposite experiences. I had a very long and torrid tapering off period. I mean, quite frankly, it was worse than the pain, and the pain was bad. So I would always say, you know, slowly, steadily, and person-centered. And I think you don't want to have too much withdrawal effects. You know, you can do it slowly and carefully. And most of the effective ways of managing your pain will work for tapering off opioids as well. It's the same thing, it's just living. For me, coming off was one of the best things I did. It really was.
Yeah, like you say, Nikki, it's two different experiences, really. I got into quite an emergency sort of situation come the end, and I had been on them at that time for about, 15, 16 years. I'd got to 25 stone, living in the armchair in absolute crippling pain, and I went crying to the doctor asking for yet another increase, and he couldn't give me any more. Pain clinic I was referred to, and there I started to hear the messages, well, the problem isn't your condition, fibromyalgia and arthritis, it's the drugs you're on. And actually, we need to get you off them, which of course is a terrifying prospect. But because I'd had a couple of emergency admissions by ambulance to hospital, then I ended up going in for a week for a rapid taper. And much like you said, Nikki, it was no picnic, but it turned out to be the best thing that I ever did, and I believe it saved my life. But what I would say is it is a very, very scary, difficult process. It's not one you should ever do on your own without advice from your healthcare professional. And I think it should always be as slow as it possibly can be. You need to feel safe and supported. And yeah, I mean, I think it's initially very, very scary when someone suggests to you, your healthcare professional suggests to you, you need to get you off, because your immediate thought is, oh my God, what's going to happen? I'm in so much pain now. I'm going to be in even more pain. But actually, when you hear the message, as I did, but the pain is being caused by the medication, not by your condition, it's that what if that we spoke about earlier on.
Thank you. Yeah, and Louise, you've got a fantastic video that's actually documented your journey off a life off opioids. Is that a life on opioids? Got that?
I can't even remember what it's called myself.
We'll scrub this out of the recording, this part. Can we still find that anywhere?
Yeah. It sits on the Live Well With Pain website under True Experiences. Yeah.
Great. No, that's a video that I've used with a lot of my patients. I think it's a really good supporting resource, because it is like both Nikki and Louise have said, it's such a difficult journey, and if anybody is watching this and wanting to come off opioids, please do speak to a health professional, because you can't just come off opioids.
No.
You need to be doing it in a staged way and in a supported way. And also, if anybody is out there that is on opioids and they don't feel like it's helping their pain, please do have the conversation. With any pain medication, it is your choice to whether you want to take it or not. And sometimes the side effects will outweigh the benefits, like in both your cases here. So if you are finding the side effects are outweighing the benefits, please do speak to someone and do get that support and advice. I'm going to come to the audience here for another question, if anyone's got one. Yes, please, let's get to you. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing. I am wondering what support has looked like from others in your life. So not just professionals, but like your community, your family, your friends. And if you'd like to share what a lack of support might have looked like as well.
I mean, I always say this, God took my arm, but he gave me the best family in the world. I fundamentally have the most loving family I could have ever asked for. And I have a huge amount of friends that will do anything for me. So I think that my recovery journey, I owe it to them. Because, I felt lost, I felt isolated, but they wouldn't let me stay in it, ever. I think because I'm a physically disabled man, I live a different experience to a lot of people living in persistent pain. Because when people see me with one arm and a stick, they people are endearing, people are lovely, people show empathy. But there are a hell of a lot of people out there that don't have the luxury of having a dead arm and a walking stick, so they're just disregarded. And I think that's why this campaign is so inherently important. But is there anyone in your life, network-wise, that helped you on your journey?
Yeah, a few of my friends, my partner has been very, very supportive, just by accepting and believing me, making me feel like, I totally understand and I believe your experience, because, a lot of people don't, because it's invisible. They look at you and they're like, well, you look fine. What do you mean you can't go to work? You're here functioning. Like, what's wrong with you? So I didn't feel very supported with my immediate family when this first happened, they couldn't really understand it. At first it was like, oh, okay, a bit of RSI, but as it went on, people didn't really get it. And even well-meaning friends, they didn't mean to make me feel bad, but they did with their comments of, but well, what do you mean you can't do this on a computer? And that was really not very nice, and probably fed into my whole experience of persistent pain. But then I met my partner, who, despite not knowing very much about it, has always made me feel really sort of believed, and that made the biggest difference to me. Just somebody that's like, I will help you. Okay, you need a bit of help with the washing up. You can't cook. Just let me know what I can do to help you with the cooking. Just little comments like that, which make me feel like I'm supported. It just feeds into making me feel safe. So that's really important. I do find that a lot of people, generally, nobody really understands pain. I didn't either until this happened to me. I didn't know that pain could persist and that you could look okay from the outside. So, yeah, campaigns are really important to raise awareness of this issue, because, as we heard, loads of people are living with it.
Yeah, thank you. So we've got a question here that's I just want to touch on this myself, actually. So a question from Jane that's come in. So Jane says, I have fibromyalgia, and there was no physical pain involved, but it started with a constant headache, which she still has, and she says that she knows the source of the pain and it's not real, but the pain is very real. I'm not sure how what you've said applies to me. Any thoughts? So I just wanted to pick up this one. I think the first thing to say with all types of pain, all pain is real. Okay, so it doesn't matter the type or the cause to your pain. All pain is real. Also, all pain will have biological elements, psychological elements, and social elements. It doesn't matter, again, about the type of pain. We've got 4 people here who have all different types of pain, different experiences of pain, yet everything we've spoken about kind of relates to everyone. We've also had another thing that's coming around arthritis, so they're not unsure whether the info tonight is relevant to them. So for those people coming in and trying to see if actually is what we've spoken about tonight relevant or not, just start to reflect on your own experiences. Is there anything that you have noticed that has changed your pain levels? And look beyond just the physical stuff. So look beyond activities, look at maybe sleep or stress or other things that we've spoken about today, even certain situations that you're in. But one of the key things I think we want people to take from today is that all pain is real, doesn't matter the type of it, and all pain has biological, psychological and social elements to it, all pain. So hopefully you do find that a lot of it does apply to you, and you found today helpful as well. So I just want to, we've got probably time for a couple more questions. Someone here from a question that's coming from a carer. So how can I, as a carer, help give somebody living with pain the help they need? So we've just spoken about support that you've got, but what would you like from someone potentially if they were caring for you? Who wants to take this one?
I think validation's really key. For me, the eye-opening moment when I was reading, all this literature and I was getting, this education, was the fact that it was speaking to something that, all of these healthcare professionals didn't speak to. They were telling me I was broken, they were telling me it was all damaged, and they were telling me that, these meds would help and everything like that. And it just wasn't validating the experience. So I think that, we've all been there where, a slight inconvenience doesn't affect us, but then you wake up, the washing's not been put out, you stub your toe, and that slight inconvenience just becomes so much more all-encompassing. When you're in pain, that is the reality of it. You wake up in pain, and these small things that won't get to you just become so much more significant. So I think just, understanding that means that you can be a better carer. Because when you see someone suffering in pain, tell them to go, maybe go on a walk. No, give them autonomy. Let them be a human, but also just give them love and compassion. Because at the end of the day, a sensitized nervous system's never going to be anti you showing it love and compassion.
Yeah, thank you.
I was just going to add to that, actually, that I think the mistake a lot of us fall into is, you walk down the street and see a friend, someone you know, and they say, oh, hi, how are you? And we instantly say, oh, hi, I'm fine. Actually, we're not fine. And I think you know, whether it's walking down the street or whether it is someone that you're caring for, I think one of the biggest things you can do, just as a human being actually, is just listen. You know, I know we live all busy lives and there's such a lot to do. And if you're a carer, you're busy too. You've got a lot to cram into your day. But actually just taking 10 minutes, half an hour out to listen to that person will make a massive difference as well.
One of the biggest things as well, is one of the biggest antidotes to pain is joy and fun. And so helping your people to do that is really valuable. One of my biggest pain management techniques is, you know, going for coffee and cake with my friends and having fun. And it's a small thing, but it can be everything.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all. So we are getting loads of questions online as well, quite specific medical questions. So just a reminder that we can't answer anything specific medically that is coming in. So I would just encourage you to speak to your GP or your health professional about that. We apologise. We'd love to be able to answer it, but just we can't do so in this format or as a campaign. So please do speak to a health professional about that. I just want to go back to the audience for a second. Is there any questions that we've got from anyone here? Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. So what you're saying is just by communicating and lifting your mood, just that little bit will take your mind off the pain for that little, I don't know, 2 minutes or something.
Let's go to Louise for that one.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we say these things and it makes it sound like it's so easy, but actually, you know, there's lots of ways you can do that. Just being creative, maybe, if that's something you enjoy doing. Anything that takes your mind off how much pain you're in can make such a massive difference, whether that's joining a craft group or, I don't know, anything.
Adult ballet was my sort of gateway to recovery because it made me fall in love with my body again. It wasn't this sort of burdensome thing, and it was something very, very different, and it was social. So it was as simple as that. But
I've looked in the mirror this morning, so I can't do that.
I think we, just going back to what kind of Cormac had on one of the slides with the weighing scales, I think when we're doing things that we enjoy and we love, it's a great way of signaling safety to the body, and it helps to just kind of calm down that nervous system slightly. So you can have those enjoyable activities that are helpful in the moment, but also longer term, they do have a good positive benefit when you are engaging with things that matter to you. I'm going to, unless there's any more questions from here, I think I'm going to end with a comment that's kind of come in today from our live stream audience. So someone said, I just want to say this event has opened up a big door for me. I've been making profuse notes and now to put things into practice. And she sends her best to everyone in the audience and also to people who have been taking part today. So I don't want this to be the end of the conversation. On our website, we are on all social media platforms. You can find out how to contact us on the website as well. So if you do have any questions that haven't been answered today, please do send them through. But otherwise, I'd like to just thank our wonderful panelists for their time today, and that will end the Q&A today. So thank you. So just to kind of to finish off today, so I just wanted to again have a big round of applause, not just for our panelists, but for Cormac as well, Professor Cormac Ryan, who was I'm sure you'll all agree, absolutely fantastic presenter and makes pain really interesting to actually learn about. The topic can actually be quite dry sometimes, but the way that Cormac presents it makes it so engaging and entertaining as well. I also want to say a big thank you to our partners, Cora Health, Arthritis UK, Teesside University, Active Partnerships, the British Pain Society, and We Are Undefeatable. They have been instrumental in spreading the word about tonight's event, and also they are doing some fantastic work themselves as well. For all of you who did sign up, whether in person or online, you will get a very short questionnaire sent to you by email. If you could please complete this and send it back to us, it'd mean the world to us. It just measures or finds out whether actually we are having an impact, if we are at all, and it just helps us to improve our event. So if you can do that, that'd be great. We've also got some resources here on the slide. These are available on the Flippin' Pain website as well. And one of those resources is a free series of podcasts that we do have, which is the Flippin' Pain Formula. So a great starting point for your journey with us. And just lastly, I want to thank everyone for giving up their time this evening. So for all of you in the audience for making it here, and all of you online who have joined us, we really do appreciate it. So with that, thank you, and I hope you do have a good evening.